we continue with the laws of the firstborn animal that is a gift to the kohen, to the priest. It's one of the 24 gifts that a kohen gets, right, for doing the service in the Holy Temple. They don't get land, right? So the firstborn male sheep or cow is given to the kohen, right? So let us go right into it. The following law applies when a sheep that had not given birth before. So now what would be the firstborn, right? Gives birth to two males. Right? So now only one is a firstborn and only one goes to the kohen. Even if both of the heads emerged at the same time, is it impossible that one did not emerge before the other? In other words, one had to come first. So you don't know exactly which one came first out, right? So since it is not known which emerged first, the kohen should take the weaker one, and the second one is a firstborn of doubtful status. He takes the weaker one. The weaker of, the smaller, the weaker animal, right? Of the two that are firstborn. Since we don't know which one is firstborn, right? His hand is on the lower because, as we will see in a moment, the burden of proof is upon the kohen to prove, and since he can't prove, so he gets the the lesser. If one of them died of the two, right? So now what's left is you don't know if this first one is a firstborn. If there's two of them, there's for sure a firstborn. But this one, maybe it's not the firstborn. So the kohen doesn't receive anything. For a living offspring is of a doubtful status, and we follow the principle, which is when one desires to expropriate property from a colleague, the burden of proof is on him, right? In other words, the kohen wants to take something from the Israelite. Well, the burden of proof is upon him to prove that this animal was the firstborn. And since we don't know, and one of them died, right? If there's two of them, then one of them for sure is. Okay, so you'll take the weaker one. But here, maybe this animal is not the firstborn. It's the burden of proof is on you because you're taking it out of my possession to give it to the kohen. Is that clear? Similarly, if a mother gave birth to a male and female, the male is a doubtful status for perhaps a female emerged first, right? Because as a female firstborn, the kohen doesn't get it. It's only male firstborn, right? This all has to do with the firstborn Jew who was saved in the 10th plague when the firstborn Egyptian was killed, right? Right? This is what it's based on, right? Therefore, the kohen does not receive anything, for when one desires to expropriate property from a colleague, the burden of proof is on him. Halacha number 2, when there are two sheep that have not given birth previously, two sheep now, and they give birth to two males, they are both given to the kohen, right? They're both given to the kohen. If they gave birth, right, that makes sense. Both are firstborn. Right? That makes sense. Okay, let's continue. If they gave birth to a male and a female and they became intermingled, the male is given to the kohen because that's for sure firstborn, right? We didn't know to which mother, but it's to a mother that was a firstborn, right? If they gave birth to two males and a female, well let's just follow. Don't get so yeah. Well, I'm glad that it's making sense so far. So far, so good. Well, let's follow. If they gave birth to two males and a female, the priest is given the weaker one, right? Why? Because for sure one of them is a firstborn. One of them may not be. So he's got to claim at least on one. So as a result, since we don't know, he gets the weaker one, right? If one of them died, though, the priest gets nothing. Kohen gets nothing. The rationale, right? It makes sense. Is that the male that is alive is a firstborn of doubtful status, and when one desires to expropriate property from a colleague, the burden of proof is on him. In the case there were two, so there's for sure a firstborn here. What? Right, if they didn't die, right? In the Slider case, one died, right? But in the case with there's two, there's for sure a firstborn. So he doesn't have to prove that there's a firstborn. He just doesn't know which one is the firstborn. There's for sure a firstborn here. So he gets the his hand is on the bottom, so to speak. He gets the lesser one, the one that's weaker. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Similar where there's yeah. So if the two sheep gave birth to two females and a male, or two males and two females, the males are firstborn of doubtful status, right? And those instances, for it's possible to say that the female was born first and then the male in both instances, right? And therefore there was no firstborn male, and therefore he gets nothing. Hence, the Kohen does not receive anything because when one desires to expropriate property from a colleague, the burden of proof is on him. Clear? Okay. If one of the sheep if one of the sheep had given birth beforehand, right? In other words, it's not a firstborn. One of the sheep, there's two sheep here. So one is going to be a firstborn and one's not going to be a firstborn, right? And one had not, should they give birth to two males and they become intermingled, they are both firstborn of doubtful status, and the Kohen gets the weaker one, right? Because one for sure is a firstborn. But if one dies, the Kohen receives nothing, right? Well, it's just different circumstance. Yeah, the truth is, I'm not certain why you would think in these instances, like Rambam, the fact that he's repeating it in a different circumstance, there must be something here that is different that you would think maybe the same law wouldn't apply, right? I'm not certain what, right? Because it seems to be pretty, pretty much the same idea. So if one dies, the Kohen receives nothing, for the living offspring is of doubtful sound. Similarly, if two sheep give birth to a male and female, it's not known which gave birth to which. The Kohen receives nothing, for the male is of doubtful status, right? Okay. Good morning. Whenever a firstborn is of doubtful status, the law is that it should be allowed to pasture. Okay, so now the question is, the ones of doubtful, right? It's doubtful. We don't know what the status is, right? It might be firstborn, right? So it should be allowed to pasture until it becomes blemished and then be eaten by its owner. So the problem is it may be a firstborn. It's doubtful. Well, you have to take away the doubt. How do you take away the doubt? That if it gets a blemish, because if it's a blemish, the holiness is gone from the firstborn. If it's got a blemish. So there, it needs to pasture till it gets a blemish. We learned those laws, 66 different things that can be blemished. Like, they've got a cut lip or in the eye, it was many different things that is considered a blemish, and meaning that it cannot go on the altar. Because for the kohen, if it was not blemished and was given to him, parts of it would go on the altar, and most of it he would eat. It'd be free to eat, but parts of it would go on the altar. So, there's holiness. But once it has a blemish, the holiness is lost. Even if it was in the hands of the kohen that he had it, then he would be able to use it entirely because it's now no longer a status of holiness. So the same thing is here. Once it goes to pasture and it gets a blemish, the owner now can slaughter it and eat it. Right. If a kohen takes possession of it, it is not expropriated from him. What happens if somehow the kohen got possession of it? So remember, it's doubtful. It might belong to the kohen, but the burden of proof is on him. But if for some reason he had possession of it, we don't expropriate it from him. So we see here the idea of, possession is 9/10 of the law. He must partake of it only after it becomes blemish. But yet he can't partake of it either until it gets a blemish, because maybe it can't go on the altar because it's doubtful, but maybe it still has holiness to it because it is firstborn. So therefore, he has to also has to go to pasture till it gets a blemish, and then he could slaughter it and use it for Shabbos. But
It has to get blemished? What happens
yes,
if it doesn't get blemished?
what happens? Animals on the field, they after time, the blemishes are not necessarily huge things. He may not offer it as a sacrifice, for only an offering that is definitely a firstborn is offered as a sacrifice. That's when slaughter an ordinary animal in the temple courtyard, because it might be ordinary and you're not allowed to slaughter in the temple courtyard. In other words, it might be ordinary animal, not a holy animal, because it might not be the firstborn, right? When a person had both animals that had been given birth before, and the animals that had not been given birth before in his herd, and they both gave birth while no one was present. If the owner entered and found those who had given previously birth, giving suck to females, and those who were not given birth previously gave suck to males, right? So we do not suspect that the offspring of one went to the another to suck, and that the offspring of the other went to the first. Instead, we follow the presumption that every animal gives suck to its own offspring, right? And therefore, the mother that never gave birth before, she is suckling to a male. So we presume, right? We don't know because you weren't there, but we presume that it's her offspring, and therefore it's a firstborn. There's a presumption here, so there's not if there was not suckling, so then there would be a doubt, but that presumption takes away the doubt, right? Yeah. And this is a presumption that is halachically binding, right? It's a halachic binding presumption, right? That's the point. What does that mean? Take what prayer? Oh. Okay. Number 5. When two individuals, their presumption is yes. When two individuals entrusted male animals, one a firstborn and one an ordinary animal. So two individuals entrusted male animals. One a firstborn and one ordinary animal with a shepherd. And one of the animals died. The shepherd may leave the second animal between them and depart. The animal is considered a firstborn of doubtful sounds and should be divided between the two owners because neither can identify his animal. Yeah. Sheep look alike, right? You can't identify. Obviously, if you can identify, then it's a different law, right? Talk about they can't identify. So the question now is, right? Well, there's a doubtful status over here. And we don't know if this is, so we don't know who it belongs to. So they both have to divide it between them. But it's a doubtful status, so what are they going to have to do? It has to go to pasture, that it will get a blemish, and then they could slaughter it and divide it, or sell it in the market and divide the money, right? When a person entrusts a firstborn animal to another person who placed it together with his ordinary animal, and then one of them died, but they do not know which one, we follow the principle. When one desires to expropriate property from a colleague, the burden of proof is on him. The animal is considered firstborn of doubtful status. Right? So the kohen doesn't get it. Even if a kohen who is a shepherd leaves his firstborn animal in the presence in a person's courtyard together with a person's ordinary animal, Should one of them die, we follow the principle that when one desires to expropriate property from a colleague, the burden of proof is on him. We may not expropriate property from the person's courtier unless there's substantial proof, or it is with the consent of the owner, the firstborn, that it was placed together with the ordinary animal belonging to the other person. Look what the Kohen did. He had a firstborn animal, but he put it together with his friend who had an ordinary animal. One of them died. He put it there. So he's cognizant of the fact, right? And they don't remember, he doesn't remember what his animal looks like, right? Right. And therefore, for the Kohen to get back his animal, he has to, the burden of proof is on him because the Israelite who he had his own. So I don't know which one is, if this is mine or yours.
Substantial proof.
You have to substantiate. So, I know that there's a, that there's, a mark on this, there's a mark on the skin of this animal, and right over here, right? There's a freckle over there. I know that freckle. Let's see if the freckle is there. Oh, the freckle's there. That's mine, right? Freckle's not there. It's not mine, for example, right? Or I put on the leg of my animal, I put a little marker over there, right? On the leg. So I would, oh, there isn't one there. So you didn't prove that it's yours. Okay, I have to stop over here.
Yeah.
Sorry, folks. Thank you very much.